So you recall, the last guy just basically lost all his ghouls. So, because you got those rifles, it really helps you to be able to get this expansion up without losing too much. If you didn't, if all you had was a handful of footies at this stage, you didn't have those rifles, you might not be able to get this expo up as easily as he does. Well, this time, sadly, for the Undead player, he doesn't just lose his ghouls, he loses his Death Knight. And the Mountain King gets level 2+ in the exchange, and again, now you've got a pretty significant advantage for the human player. Now, the Undead player was able to get a couple of unit kills there. I believe I saw him take out a rifleman, if I'm not mistaken, and he may have even done better than that. I wasn't paying close enough attention, but you know, at this stage of the game, you lose your Death Knight. That is the key hero to the Undead army. That Death Coil, which gives you that great flexibility of being able to heal your own units as well as damage your opponent's units. That's such a huge deal. And this Undead player he kind of compounds this mistake here. He doesn't want to just sit in his base, but he goes out and he tries to creep a camp, which is not a terribly easy camp to creep. And I think he loses one or maybe even 2 ghouls as he does this. And the human player, again, knowing that, okay, I've kind of got an advantage, let's go and at least pay a visit to the Undead base. And if you can take out that Tomb of Relics, that's great, because he can't build destroyers without the Tomb of Relics. So that's a good thing to be able to do. Slows down his destroyers, which is going to give you more time to get the counter to the destroyers. So at this point, this Undead player is actually looking to build kind of a mix, and whoops, got the old Lich in a bad position, and without the old Death Knight around to heal him up, he goes down real fast. So, you know, again, the Undead player makes a couple of mistakes here, so you might want to say, well, yeah, the human player should not have had this easy of a time had the Undead player not screwed up so bad. But okay, well, here's a mistake that the Undead player makes, and he's going to lose his level 3 Mountain King. That kind of evens things out a little bit. So anyway, at this stage of the game, the Undead player is at 37 food. The human player is also at 37. Actually, he just went up to 43 food. So it's really not too out of balance. But the Undead cannot build his destroyers right now because he's got to wait for his Tomb of Relics to be rebuilt. And because he's lost his heroes, he is losing that battle as far as hero levels are concerned. His Death Knight is level 3 compared to a level 4 Archmage. His Lich is level 1 compared to a level 3 Mountain King. And really, I think you could probably, look at the levels at the end of the game. You could compare the Mountain King level to that of the Lich. And I bet 9 times out of 10, if the Mountain King outlevels the Lich, the human player is going to win. Well, 9 out of 10 might be an exaggeration. But more often than not, that is the case. Whoever is able to kind of level up that damage-dealing hero coming out second is going to be at a significant advantage. So both of the players here lost their secondary heroes, but they're both able to recover from it. So here again, you're going to notice trying to take out these ghouls as much as possible. In this situation, his Archmage is getting nuked, and so he's having to run him back, and he can't get too cute with this, and he's going to have to teleport out. So he wasn't able to do a whole lot of damage there, but he can afford to play this little game, and this is an important thing to do as a human player. Against Undead, you will find yourself, at least at some point in the game, you will probably find yourself outmatched in terms of your army stacking up against his. Do not be afraid to use a teleport scroll. Just get the heck out of Dodge. If you've expanded, you are going to be ahead of things economically. You can afford to do that, and it's not going to kill you. Let me take a sip of water here.
Job's done. Research complete.
I'm doing a lot of talking. Anyway, Undead player trying to get up an expo. sometimes you will see this. You know, a lot of Undead players just, they're not in the habit of trying to expand, and so sometimes they won't try until really late in the game, but sometimes it's a smart thing to try and do. I think probably in this case the Undead player might sense, you know, I've kind of made a couple of mistakes in this game, and I am probably behind a little bit right now, and I need to do something bold in order to get back in it. And so he's going to try and get this expansion going, which really isn't that bad of an idea, because the human player may not be thinking in terms of the Undead player expanding right now. So they're both creeping, they're both trying to level their heroes up, doing their thing, and you'll notice at this stage in the human player's base, dual aviaries. So pretty obvious, we're going to see mass air from this human, and this is the other strat. Oh, and I love this, just kill those footmen. You know, people will try and tell you that when you see these Gosus killing their footmen like that it has something to do with their population count. It really doesn't, man. I'm telling you right now, if that, it's just a pure case of that footman just fought like a wuss in the last battle. He sucked, man. He was like flailing around with a sword, and he kept missing, and you know, like, you're trying to creep, you know, you don't have time for that. You got to make an example of that guy. You got a footman that sucks, just kill it. Dude, don't let him get away with that crap. Take him out. You got to set an example, or else you're going to have priests that just are going to be lazy with their healing, and you know, your riflemen are going to start missing and stuff. You can't put up with that. You got a footman that's not pulling his weight, you just take him out. That's it. That's it, man. Period. Do what you got to do. Anyway, getting back to something a little more serious. Here we see the human player coming in, trying to apply a little bit of pressure. Takes out that one ziggurat. That again, designed to simply slow down the Undead player, because really you can drag this out a little bit if you're thinking, I've got the expansion and he doesn't. So I can come in, I can do a little damage to him, I can TP out, and it's okay because I can afford that. But what he doesn't know at this stage of the game, I don't think, or maybe he does, maybe he did scout out that expansion somehow. So maybe he does know that this guy's got an expansion, and he wanted to make sure he was going dual slaughterhouses and not doing something else tricky. So, but he's getting the air, and you see he gets a couple of griffins first. I think he was starting to suspect this guy might start to hit me with a whole bunch of abominations. And that would obviously be devastating if all you have is a bunch of rifles. So he starts to get the griffins to deal with the abos, but then obviously when he went and attacked his base just a minute ago, he noticed, wow, there's a whole buttload of destroyers. And so he switches over to Dragonhawk Riders. And, you know, Dragonhawk Riders, it's kind of like this. Like, riflemen are really a decent unit against undead in general. They get owned by the abominations, but you can make them work against ghouls if you can use them correctly. Obviously, they're a decent unit to have against destroyers, and almost anything else that the undead player would throw at you. But what if your riflemen had 725 hit points and they could fly, so that they couldn't be hit by ghouls and they couldn't be hit by abominations? Well, that's basically what a Dragonhawk Rider is. 725 hit point flying rifleman. Does piercing damage. Has a couple of extra little fun spells like the cloud thing and the entangle, or whatever, the shackles, the aerial shackles, in case you got an undead player who's crazy enough to try and use gargoyles against you. So anyway, I like Dragonhawk Riders in general as a unit to get against undead, and you can pretty much mask them up, and having the dual aviaries, which you can afford to do that because you've got an expansion. I don't know if I've said that 100 times already, but I mean, that really is a big deal. And you can upgrade your units, you can do some things that really will make a difference because of that expansion. And at this stage of the game, he knows his opponent has an expansion, and he's going to try and regain the economic advantage by doing two things at once. He's going to attack his expo, and because the undead player just lost his lich, he's a little bit reticent to just go defend his expo when he knows that he probably is going to take a beating there. At least right now he might. So he plays a little safe. I think maybe he should have tried to save this Expo. But the human player is smart. He's going to get a second expansion in the lower left-hand corner of the map while he is taking down the Expo of the Undead player. So even had the Undead player come in here and been able to save this Expo, the human player was going to grab the economic advantage back once again. And you can see just by looking at the mine, the Undead player really didn't get a whole lot of gold out of that mine, and compared to the human player's expansion, you know, he's like 4,000 gold ahead of the Undead player if you kind of look at it that way. So the human player doing a great job of scouting, building a scout farm at the other corner of the map, making sure that the Undead player isn't expanding somewhere else. And now that you have secured that economic advantage, you can begin to pressure your opponent. You've got an army that counters his reasonably well. But again, you got to make sure that you're scouting the whole time, because the Undead could switch up. He could go to Abominations all of a sudden instead of Destroyers. So you kind of have to stay on top of things. If you've got dual aviaries, you've got some flexibility. You can get the Griffins, which will obviously hard counter the Abos. And the Dragonhawks plus rifles on the ground do a pretty nice job of countering the Destroyers. But again, the human player, you know, just get the heck out of Dodge. He just TPs out of there. He's like, I don't want to fight here. Probably a smart move. And you're going to see here in just a second, as the Undead player comes in to attack what he thinks is the human's only expansion, human player will counter attack, and in equal numbers, Destroyers probably still get an advantage over Dragonhawks. You probably have to have them outnumbered there in a straight up fight, because the Destroyers have like 900 hit points, so that makes them a little tougher to take down. But you do have the attack damage stuff working in your advantage, because you're doing piercing damage, which is doing double damage to that medium armor destroyer, and he's doing magic damage. It still takes extra damage for the Dragonhawk Riders, but I think it's only 150%, whereas piercing does 200%. So could be wrong on that, but I think I got that right. So anyway, you can see there really, at that stage of the game, there really wasn't a whole lot that the Undead player was going to be able to pull off there. You've got your Dragonhawk Riders and your Riflemen kind of focusing on those Destroyers, and you've got 2 or 3 Griffins focusing on either if there's a hero that maybe is weak and you want to try and take him out, or you're going to focus him on the Abominations and try and take them out with the Griffins. And again, without that significant ground army to really help with positioning and so forth, the Undead player is at a disadvantage. So there you have it. There's 2 slightly different ways using really the same concept. You know, the Rifleman in the first game and the Flying Rifleman in the second game. But you got to get that Tier 2 Expo. You've got to maintain an economic advantage, and you have to continuously scout the Undead player really well. Make sure he's not expanding. Make sure you know what he's up to. Is he getting more and more ghouls? Is he switching to fiends? Is he building Abominations now? Is he sticking with Destroyers? Is he doing some other crazy thing? You need to pay attention. He can switch to Gargoyles if all you've got is Griffins, and then you can be up the creek. So you want to make sure that you keep tabs on the Undead player, know exactly what he's building, so that you have the right units, and you want to maintain an economic advantage. If you can do those 2 things, if you can scout well, and you can outmine the Undead player, you've got a fighting chance. And so there's 2 examples of how you might be able to do it. I hope that's helpful for you guys that are struggling against Undead. I need to kind of work on these strategies myself a little bit and get better at them so I can start winning a few more games against these pesky Undead players. But anyway, hope that was helpful. Hope you guys enjoyed it, and I will see you again soon. Peace.